Hello. In this video we are going to be continuing on with our brushes and symbols library, and in particular we are going to continue working on starting with the pocket. Okay, so the pocket is going to be made with a rectangle tool, and our shortcut for that is M. So let's go ahead and click on the screen, and we're going to enter 1.5 in the width and 1.05 in the height. So we want it a little shorter than we want it in terms of the width, okay? Let's hit D for default fill and stroke. Now part of the reason that we want it a little bit wider is we're going to add a point here at the bottom, and that's going to lengthen it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move it down here, and I'm going to zoom in on the area just to make it easier to work on. Let's go ahead and get our add anchor point tool, and we're going to go ahead and add an anchor point at the very bottom here in line with that center point. Okay, so you can see with my smart guides on, it tells me that I'm intersecting with the center of that rectangle, and I will be adding the point right in the middle. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to go ahead and move that point down 20 spaces. So I will direct select that point, hold shift, down arrow 2 times, because remember, when we hold shift and use the arrow keys, it moves 10 spaces for each click. Okay, so I just moved it 20 spaces. To create the stitching, we're going to use offset path. Okay, so let's select the pocket, and we're going to go to Object, Path, Offset Path. Okay, now if we want to have the copy outside of the pocket, we use a positive number. But if we want the stitching to be inside the pocket, we use a negative number. So our number will be minus 0.06 offset. Okay, so let's preview that. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, we do not want a fill on our stitching, so I'm going to get rid of the fill. Okay. All right, now I want you to notice the picture that I have here. You'll see that we don't have stitching all the way around the pocket, okay? And my offset that I've done goes all the way around the pocket. So what I'm going to do is direct select that top line and just hit backspace. Okay, now I'm going to direct select the top points of what's left, and I'm going to use the up arrow key until it touches the top edge. Okay, perfect. All right, now I'm going to select that line, and I'm going to apply the brush that I created. Okay, so I'm going to go into my brushes, and I'm going to use my double needle brush, and there you go. That's what it looks like. Okay. I am going to reduce the size of that brush. Whoops, don't do that. I've applied it twice. Okay, so I'm going to, oops, that's because I put the zipper. Hello. Cancel. Okay, double click on the correct one. Okay, so, oops, double click. And we had increased it to 125. I'm going to take it back down to 100. The reason I had increased it is because of the layout. When we originally made it, it made it look really nice to make it a little larger. Plus, it's good for you to learn how to make something larger. Okay, so I'm going to apply that to my strokes. Okay, now I'm going to create the stitching that goes across the top edge. And notice that it's just a single stitch rather than double. So I'm going to get my line segment tool. I'm going to start at the side here, and I'm going to click and drag across. I'm going to hold shift to constrain it, and when I intersect the other side of the pocket, I will release the mouse and then release shift. Now I'll go ahead and apply my single needle stitch. Isn't that great? And there you go, we've got a pocket. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go up to my symbols panel and new symbol, and I'm going to call it pocket. Now this kind of pocket could be used on a shirt or even on a back of a pair of jeans. Now on the jeans it would have to be probably made a little bit larger, but there you go. You can adjust that and change it if you wanted to. You can make different variations of it for your library. Okay, so now that we've done that, Control S, and now we're going to make our zipper pull. Okay, so it's made up of a series of different shapes, and we're going to start with our rounded rectangle. There's no shortcut for that, so we just have to go get it. Let's go ahead and click, and we're going to enter for the rounded rectangle. Our first shape is 0.3, tab 0.3, and our corner radius tab is 0.08. Okay, let's make sure that's right. Yes, okay, hit enter. Okay, D for default fill and stroke. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see it. Okay, so we're going to rotate this so that it's kind of more like a diamond. This corner or curved corner will be hitting the horizontal line. So I'm going to position around this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. The rotate sometimes is difficult to use unless you're zoomed in more. Okay, I'm going to look for the double curved arrow. There we go. And I'm going to hold shift because I want to rotate it to 45 degrees. Okay, it says 315. If I went the other way, it would probably say, oh, okay, 135. That's fine. That works. Whatever works so that you can make it so it's more like a diamond. Now we're going to stretch this out, and so that means I'm going to direct select these 2 points right here. So I'm marquee selecting with my direct select, and I'm going to move that down 10 spaces. So shift, click down 1 time, and then I'm going to use the up arrow 1 time. Okay, so that just saves time. Instead of clicking 9 times, you click 2 times. 1 holding shift, and then you release shift, and then click the up arrow, and that gives you your 9 spaces. Okay, so we're ready to move on to our next shape, and this is going to, what we just did is the base of the zipper pull. Now we're going to create the pull, the actual part that you lift and pull when you're zipping up or down. So this one we're going to use the rectangle tool, shortcut M, and our numbers are going to be 0.17, tab 0.63. D for default fill and stroke. Okay, so we're going to angle this in at this bottom edge. So we're going to use our direct select and direct select the bottom right. Arrow click 2 times to the left. 1, 2. Go ahead and direct select the left anchor point or corner, and then right arrow 2 clicks. Okay, so we're just narrowing that down a little bit. All right, now we're ready to create the little hole in the zipper pull. So we're going to use our rounded rectangle, and our number is going to be 0.05, tab 0.24. Okay, now we're just going to reuse the corner radius, and you can see I didn't put that there. That's because we're just reusing the same number we used before. So hit OK, and we're going to place that on top of our zipper pull like that. Select it, align to selection, horizontal align center, and then in our Pathfinder panel, exclude. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and put that on top of our base. All right, now the last part we need is the little part that kind of creates the hinge of our zipper. And so we're going to use our rounded rectangle again. Our width is going to be 0.08, and our height is going to be 0.2. Go ahead and use the same corner radius. Okay, and let's go ahead and move that on top of our zipper pull. Sometimes you have to deselect because it's trying to, when you get too close, it's trying to do other stuff. Okay, everything looks aligned, but I'm going to align it just one more time and make sure everything is great. Looks good. Okay, I'm going to make 2 copies of this. Okay, so I used Alt and Shift and dragged a copy, and then I used my Control D to duplicate the action. Okay, so I want one of these to be white, 1 silver, and 1 gold. So my white one's already done. I'm going to select my silver, and I'm going to go into my swatches and go into gradients, metals. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and choose a linear silver, and I'm going to use a linear gold or brass. Okay, that's great. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save these as symbols just one at a time. Okay, so that's a new symbol, and I'll call it gold or brass zipper pull. And I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to save the second one as silver zipper pull. Hit OK. And then white zipper pull. Okay, so I'm going to group the three of these just for layout purposes, so Control G. And if I wanted to, I could save them as a group, but there's no point in really doing that because I wouldn't use them as a group. Okay, now I want to show you something real quick here because we are going to use our zipper pull. So I'm going to go ahead and pull one out here and bring it on over to my zipper. Now actually, I'm going to I'll pull out this silver one. Okay, so I've pulled that out. Now, our zipper is not silver, is it? It's white. Okay, and we're going to keep it that way, but I just want to show you something really quickly in terms of how you can change your zipper to a metallic. Now, there's something about Illustrator, they don't allow us to save brushes as a gradient, which I think, it's too bad because, most of the time your zippers are going to be like silver or gold or have some shine to them. So having a gradient in them gives them that dimension. So with our brushes, we can do something. But let me just tell you, once you do this, it changes the brush, okay? It turns it into individual elements. But let's go ahead and we're going to go Object, Expand Appearance. And so what it does is it takes that brush and turns it into little individual elements. And so then we can go ahead and go into our gradient panel, and actually I can just use my silver again here. And I can rotate it so that it looks a little better if I want to. But do you see how that's kind of cool because now it looks like a silver zipper? For the purposes of this particular exercise, I would say just leave it as white. So I'm going to Control Z to undo what I just did. And I'm going to go ahead and drag out from the Symbols panel a white zipper pull. I'm going to rotate it, so look for the curved arrow. Rotate it, put it onto your zipper brush, and there you go. You have and I think it's a little big, so I'm going to hold Shift and drag the corner just a little here. Maybe shrink it just a little bit. Okay, see now that looks, to me that looks a lot better. Make sure it covers the end of your zipper. And I think the angle's pretty good because of the way that's going. I could turn it just a little more maybe. Okay, there we go. We've completed the zipper pulls and I showed you how you can convert a brush into, especially this closed zipper brush, how you can make it look like a metallic. Okay, so even if you can't save it as a gradient, when you create the brush you can always change it later on by using Object Expand Appearance. Okay, so we've completed the zipper pulls, Control S, and we're going to get ready now, and I'm just going to move this over so it's aligned with these objects. We're going to do our layout in just a minute. So I wanted to show you, I found my picture of the sequins and I brought it in. So I hope you found, I like this one because it's colorful and that's kind of cool. So it's kind of nice to have that. So you can choose different colors of sequins. Okay, now we're going to create our different components for it, so you can see I've shown that here. But this one's kind of picky, and if you don't do it right and you don't pay attention to what I'm saying, you can definitely end up with a problem in that you won't be able to color your sequence. I'm going to ask you to really listen to what I say and try to follow it exactly. So I picked up the ellipse tool. I'm going to click and I'm going to enter 0.5 0.5, tab 0.5 so that I have a perfect circle. I'm going to hit D for default fill and stroke just for now until we get ready to color it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so we can see this. Okay. All right, so the next part of the sequin is the polygon. So I'm going to pick up the polygon tool. I'm going to click and I'm going to tell it exactly what I want. So I know that I want the sides to be 6. Okay, so if you actually look at the sequin, you'll see it has 6 sides. And I want to make it 1.5, so it needs to be a little smaller than the outer circle. So 1.5 and hit OK. And it looks like I'm sorry, it should have been 0.5. Okay, let's try it again. 1.5 was gigantic. So 0.15, 6 sides, hit OK. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to select those and I'm going to use my align panel and do horizontal align center, vertical align center. Okay, so that's not too picky, right? Okay, now comes the picky part. Okay, and if you follow the way I do it, it will be easy. It won't be hard. Okay, it's just people sometimes don't pay attention to what I'm saying in this next part. So we're going to use the line segment tool, and it's super important that we intersect with the polygon and the outside edge. And if you have your smart guides on, do you see how it says anchor? I know that if I start drawing from here, I'll be intersecting the polygon. So I'm going to click and drag with my line segment tool. And when it intersects with the shape, see how it turns red? I've got it. Okay. Another way you can check it is go in outline mode. Control Y, deselect, and make sure it's hitting the edge. Now, sometimes you think it's hitting the edge. It requires that you really zoom in to make sure you truly are hitting the edge. Okay, so is it hitting the edge? You betcha it is. Okay, that's going to be important because we're going to use these lines to divide the polygon or to divide the sequin, and then we can color it. So very, very important. Okay, so now I'm going to select that line and I'm going to reflect it over to here. Don't draw each of these separately. It's so hard to, make them perfect. So it's better to just reflect them. So I picked up my reflect tool, shortcut O. I'm going to Alt click in the center of the polygon and I'm going to do horizontal 0, preview it, perfect, hit copy. Okay, now I like to zoom in to always make sure everything's hitting exactly where I want. Okay, and because I used the center of the polygon and because the polygon is perfectly symmetrical, then it should automatically hit the edges just the way you want it to. Okay, and I would say that looks great. Double click the hand tool. Let's continue on. I'm just going to leave it in outline mode for now because I think it's easy to check how we're doing. Okay, all right, now we're going to use the line segment tool, shortcut backslash. I'm going to hover over that anchor point at the corner of the polygon, look for the word anchor. I'm going to click and drag holding shift because I want this to be at a perfect horizontal angle, okay, or 0 degrees. And I made sure that it hit the corner here and the edge of my ellipse here. So let's just zoom in real quick. Okay, looks good. The smart guides are really nice because if you use them, it tells you if you've got it. Okay, there's no guessing on that. Okay, now we're going to reflect this to the other side and we're going to use this center little dot of the polygon to help us get a perfect reflected version of these lines. So I'm going to select the top line, hold shift, select the next line and the next line until I have all 3 lines selected. Now I'm going to hit O for reflect. I'm going to position in the center of the polygon, look for the word center. I'm going to hold down Alt and then I'm going to left click. This time I want vertical 90 and then I'll hit copy so you can see it previewing. So once I know it's perfect, go ahead and hit copy. Okay, and I would suggest that you get the zoom tool and just make sure that everything is intersecting the way you intended. Okay, but again, if you really follow what I say by using the reflect tool and clicking on the center of the polygon, you should just be great. Okay, now we've got everything. I'm going to go ahead and put this into preview mode, Control Y, and we're going to go ahead now and work on coloring this. Okay, so I'm going to double click the hand tool, get the zoom tool, zoom in a little here. Okay, now I'm going to get my selection tool and I'm going to select all of the ellipse. And I'm going to use divide in the Pathfinder panel. So Pathfinder, divide. Okay, now I'm going to do one more thing and then we're going to ungroup it, because if you remember from the heart exercise, it divides it, but it's still a unit until we ungroup it. So don't ungroup it yet though, because I want to make a hole in the center of the sequin, just like you see on this example here. Okay, so we're going to be using the ellipse tool again. Okay, so we're going to make a tiny little circle, and I'm trying to see if I put that number there. Let's try 0.05. Okay, so ellipse, I'm going to click, I'm going to put 0.05, tab 0.05. Okay, so I'm using the size that I used for the holes on the button because I think that's going to be a good size. Okay, so I'm going to select that, and I'm going to, in the Align panel, do Horizontal Align Center, Vertical Align Center. So it's perfectly aligned. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to ungroup it. Okay, so I'm going to right click, make sure you get everything except the circle, right click, ungroup. Now I'm going to cut the hole in the polygon. So I'm going to select the polygon and shift click to add to selection. I'll get the circle, and now in the Pathfinder panel, exclude. Okay, all right, so now that I've done that, I'm ready to color, and I'm going to make 3 versions of this. So go ahead and drag out so that you have 3 copies. Okay, so we're going to sample the colors in some of our sequins here. What's the best way? Well, let's go ahead and get our selection tool, select a section, go ahead and hold down I for eyedropper, and sample a color. Hold down Control, deselect, select the next section, release Control, back to the eyedropper. So we're using Control to allow us to go back and forth between the last selection tool used and the tool that we're currently using, which is the eyedropper. Okay, so you're going to keep doing this until you have all of the colors filled in your sequin. Okay, now I'm just happen to be picking the sequins that are visible right now, but I could pick different ones depending on, you know, do I want to use that? Do I like that color? Okay, there we go. And it's really cool to actually use the colors that are in a sequin in a photo of a sequin. Don't use, don't use a vector, because sometimes people are making up what they think the colors would be. This is cool because it's an actual photograph, so it tells us exactly what color you would see in terms of it reflecting. Oops. And I'm talking too much, so I'm making a boo-boo here. I clicked on the background. Okay. Okay, I'm almost done. Okay, beautiful. I think I'm going to click somewhere. Okay, yeah, not quite that dark. Okay, there we go. That white felt a little too white to me. Okay, I'm going to select all of this, and I am going to give it a stroke because I think it helps give it just that little edge we need. So I'm going to do 0.25, and I just do it in black. Okay, and I think that looks good because it also looks a lot like we're seeing here. Okay, now you could also do the stroke on this different sections, like you can see how it's lighter on some of the areas because it's reflecting higher where the bend is. Okay, but for our purposes this is good. Okay, so now we're going to select each of these sequins and make a new symbol. So sequin 1, and then sequin 2, and sequin 3. Okay, all right, so, oops, look at me. Let's try that again. I didn't get all of it. So you could group those if you want to. Okay, sequin 3. All right, and then I can go ahead and group those. I'm going to move this one up a little, about right there. Okay, that's good. I'll select those and group them. Okay, now I'm going to just make sure my layout is good. Okay, so I want to center all of my symbols to each other. So horizontal align center, horizontal align center on these as well. Okay, and then I have to think about how I want to center these. Probably I want to do vertical align center on these because they're different sizes. Okay, so vertical align center will align them based on their centers rather than their bottoms or tops. Okay, beautiful. So that's all aligned pretty nicely. I'm going to select all of this and just arrow key it over to the side a little bit. And maybe I'll select this group and arrow key it to the side as well. Now, you could add to this after this semester is over. You can add to this and have lots and lots and lots of symbols and lots of brushes, and you can make these much smaller and have this be something really useful to you. Now, you saw how in the symbols panel I pulled out symbols as I needed them. Okay, I want to show you something else about symbols too. We have something called a symbol sprayer, and you can double click on it and you can adjust the diameter of it, the intensity, all sorts of stuff about it. Okay, so if you wanted to, you could pick up one of your sequins and you could spray it onto something. Okay, and isn't that cool? But you can also adjust your symbols and you know, how close you want them, if you want them to overlap. But it's kind of cool to be able to use them in a different way. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our names to these. And so I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to click right under this eyelet and type eyelet. Okay, and I'm going to use my align panel, my paragraph panel, and do my align center. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to move that down just a little bit because I don't want it quite so close, and then I'm going to do my align to selection. Okay, and I'll probably group that in a little bit and realign everything. I probably shouldn't have bothered to do that yet. I'm holding Alt and Shift and I'm copying that out, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want them to be perfectly lined up horizontally. I don't want to have to do that a second time. So I'm going to go ahead and type in here Bartak. Okay, and I'm going to select these two and I'm going to Alt Shift drag them down. And you're probably wondering, why am I reusing the text? Because I don't have to go up and choose align center again, okay, in the paragraph panel. So I'll just keep reusing it. And then I'll do my alignment in a minute. So this will be belt loop. Okay, and I will borrow these two now and pull them down. Okay, and rename these as well. So this is fancy button. And this one is our keyhole buttonhole. Okay, let's go ahead and grab those. Oops, selection tool. And let's go ahead and drag those down. I try to space them, you know, about equally. I don't always get them perfect because the shapes are different. Okay, so maybe move this one up just a little bit so it's more similar to what we have there. Okay, so let's go ahead and rename this, and we'll call this one Pocket. Whoops. Ah, come on. Hitting everything on my keyboard other than what I want to hit. And then we will name this sequins. Sequins. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move these two up just a little bit so that they're closer, more consistent with what I've done on these others. This one I'm going to pull down a little because I think that's a little close. Okay. All right. I'm going to group each of the symbols with their text because I'm going to make sure they're aligned just one last time. Okay. Oops. Sometimes it likes to move. There we go. I'm using a laptop, so when I hit my keyboard, sometimes weird things happen. Okay, perfect. Okay, last thing, I'm going to select all of those, align, and align. And I know they're aligned vertically because I already did that. I aligned the text by dragging out a copy, so I don't have to align that. I already know this is perfect, so I don't need to do anything. We're not adding any drop shadow to this because we don't want to have a drop shadow on our symbols or our brushes. Okay, so if you have this done, you are complete. So we're going to save it, and then we're going to save it as a PDF for you to turn in. So File, Save As. Oh, it's not done saving. Okay. File, Save As, and we're going to save the PDF, and you're going to turn in the PDF to me. Okay. All right. So that concludes the Brush and Symbols library, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I think it's really useful, and I think it's fun too. So that concludes our brushes and symbol exercise.